Firstly, thank you for having me, and good afternoon. Government is government. Yeah. We have a new party in government, but we've always had government. So the new party that has taken the role of managing this government, obviously people expect some answers. So we can't wish away what happened in the past simply because it was a different party in power. So people still expect answers, and we expect the new government to try and help us solve the problems that happened in the past. So the public service is still the same? Public service is still the expectations remain the same? Absolutely. All right. So now let's look at this particular government that we're going into, or the particular individual who will be giving the State of the Nation address. The President of this Republic, Advocate BOCONGO, is a full-on human rights lawyer, right? I hope you're not putting a lot of burden of expectations on him because of his previous engagement. It comes with the territory, I'm afraid to say. It comes with the territory. So that on its own, the background of the individual holding office also brings along, those expectations. We've had human rights issues in the past. So now the nation is looking and thinking, now finally we have somebody with a human rights orientation. So society tends to expect a bit more friendly approach towards issues of human rights. So it comes with the territory. It's unavoidable, and I hope His Excellency is ready for the challenge. I believe he is. Yeah. So now when you look at NGO or civil society in general, we are coming from a government that when it started, civil society had a bit of nice clouds to float on, and then along the way things started changing slowly, and then apparently they got a bit worse now when you came into the 2000s until now, where civil society was always complaining about different things. Is it press freedom? Is it care of the disabled and so on, right? Yeah. What do we expect to see now going forward based on the past? Yes, indeed. We, as civil society, we've had our highs and lows with previous administrations. We've had, the relationship was mainly friendly when we were agreeing on a position. Or friendly for the government? Yes, for both, I think, okay. But mainly friendly for the government when we were agreeing on a certain position. And then it tended to get a bit more aggressive towards civil society when we held a different position. I'll give an example of, most recent example with the UK hunting ban, where they were saying we shouldn't be hunting our elephants and selling trophies. We were united with our government to say we are best placed to know how to manage our wildlife. And government even invited us to be part of the delegation that went to the UK to advance the country position. But on other matters where we held a different position, then we tend to be seen as enemies of the state, so to say. The most recent one being the failed Constitutional Amendment Bill. That, the position of civil society was very clear, that the process was flawed, it wasn't human rights centered. And in that regard, we were, in a way vilified, to a point where now you're attracting visitations from the notorious DIS. So it has been rocky and friendly sometimes. So with the new government, like you said, with the president being a human rights advocate, we are expecting a more open sort of relationship, a more transparent and consultative relationship, where civil society is viewed as important partners towards advancing national development, because civil society plays both the role of advocates for those that are not able to, speak for themselves. But we are also service providers and co-implementers to government. Earlier on, you spoke about, the service provision that we provide, for instance, when it comes to children. Yeah. We are the ones who are running the children's shelters that are housing the most vulnerable children. It is civil society that is housing survivors of gender-based violence. It is civil society that usually goes into the hard-to-reach areas to provide services. Even in emergencies, your Red Crosses of this world. So we are often seen as friends when it's convenient, mostly for government, but we are hoping with this new administration, right from the onset, we'll see a more consultative, collaborative, and transparent relationship that honors and values the contribution of each partner. All right. So when we talk, especially on the vilifying part of it, right, there's always been a thought that civil society
does not understand the line between national security and human rights, right? How are we going to place that now going forward?
Well, the issue of national security has often been thrown in our faces, mostly when it's convenient. When you look at a lot of the issues that we've dealt with, that, I gave the example of the constitutional review.
Yeah.
How were we in any way compromising national security by calling for more public education on the subject matter, such that people can get engaged from a position of being informed and being educated? But a lot of these issues also stem from a government that is too closed up, that people don't have access to information, and then people are forced to guess and speculate. And now with the advent of social media, even fake news and misinformation is spread very fast. So that's why we're saying we're expecting a more open government, a more consultative government, a more, a government that is more free with facilitating access to information, so that people don't get to be frustrated and have fake news being thrown at them.
All right. So now when we look at this, right, we obviously, if we were to ask for an audit, we'd expect the audit of the poverty eradication, human rights abuses or whatever. The audit would expect it mostly to come from people like BOCONGO. Would you see would you have a bit of a good picture of Botswana? Let's not take 58 years, let's just take 8 years. And say if you were to audit the human rights issues, you were to audit social equity and so on, would you say Botswana was faring okay, or the reports were flawed?
Faring okay, we're still one of the most unequal societies in the world. Rich country, endowed with a lot of natural resources. But when you look at the level of poverty and inequality, it doesn't match the resource endowment. And then when you look at the, cases or issues around corruption, even our scales we've been going down. We've been regressing quite progressively. Even just today, there's a planned march against allegations of corruption.
It happened 35 minutes ago.
Yes, it happened. So there are all these that are, coming up time and again. So the audit will be a welcome development to try and help us unpack, particularly for the new government, help the new government unpack and certify what exactly is the state of affairs that we're inheriting, so that they can also be transparent with Botswana to say, this is what we're finding coming in, and then move into, this would be the measures to try and address the situation that we are, that we're confronted with. Because otherwise, we'll just keep going around in vicious cycles.
All right. So before he came into power and was still in opposition, then, however, he was still a lawyer, an advocate, right? Yes. The president has stood up vocal on a number of issues, to a point where he's represented some organizations there and there, right? Should these organizations be having expectations?
On the president himself or on government?
On government, because now it's led by him.
Yes, indeed. We don't expect double standards. Okay. So if you stand for human rights, if you stood for human rights then, the same human rights are still human rights today. For example, issues of the Basara, for instance, and issues around the access to water and the CKGR and things like that. In the case of the gentleman who's been lying in the mortuary for the past 2 years, issues of LGBTQIs. So we expect consistency, because otherwise Botswana might feel like they were sold a dummy, that promises were this way, and then now that power has been acquired, we are seeing a different narrative. So we expect to see consistency. And organizations like that, for instance, our members, Ditwanolo, for instance, the Center for Human Rights, they will be expecting that the engagement that we had with both the president as an advocate before he assumed power, and the party, if they did have such engagements, they would expect consistency. Otherwise, it would be a cause for concern to say, why are we having multiple standards?
So when we look at the human rights status of Botswana, right, we do know the Human Rights Commission kind of sits very close to the Ombudsman, right, more than it should be really autonomous. Do you think there are some of the things that should be looked at as far as governance is concerned?
100%. We know that the Ombudsman recently got conferred with the human rights mandate, and they're probably also still trying to figure it out. And as per the Paris principles, they're not entirely autonomous, not entirely an independent human rights organization as per the principles. But this is a step in the right direction, that finally we have a body that is mandated to deal with human rights issues. So from civil society, we'll be expecting a push towards complete independence and complete compliance with the principles that establish the institution. And the same goes for other oversight institutions. We would expect to see some progressive measure towards full independence of these oversight institutions so that they can do their mandate uninhibited.
All right. So one of the things that the president has spoken vehemently or strictly about is the issue on corruption. And this was today when he spoke to the 18 cabinet ministers that is recently all confirmed to form government. What do you think his take really would be? Because there's a bit of a confidence shake from the markets as well as the people to see how this corruption will be dealt with, because clearly there's a straightforward message that says, do not be corrupt.
And that's a welcome message. Do not be corrupt, because when you're corrupt, you are denying an average Motswana. You are denying a child at Zutswa, a school. You are denying an elderly woman at Hamudubu, a clinic. So I think the messaging is welcome. So it's good that those that are coming into power, those that have just assumed office, have got the message loud and clear. Yes, indeed, markets and industry might be shaken, but I believe you get shaken when you know you've been engaged in some corrupt practices.
Yeah.
If you've been doing things right, there's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, you benefit more and gain more when you don't expect to be corrupted by anyone to get a tender or to supply a service, because corruption bleeds both. It bleeds, the investors, and it also bleeds the economy and denies the citizenry of the necessary services.
All right.
Yes.
So one of the things we also look at, the new Ministry of Child Welfare and Basic Education. That's a ministry that's very bold to set up, to say the least. What do you think is going to happen, and do you think is a welcome initiative or drive towards changing Botswana?
100%. I think one of the things that we've actually not been doing so well as a country is the way we treat our children.
Yeah.
When you look at the cases of child abuse in this country, of recent it's been worse with the murders of children carried out by their own fathers. The way we treat our children is horrible. So it's a welcome development that there's a deliberate effort to try and improve the welfare of our children, because like the former SA President Mandela once said, he said, you want to see the morality of a society, look at the way he treats his children. And I don't think we've fared very well as a country. So it's a welcome development. I believe and hope that it will be equipped enough to fully carry out its mandate. And in doing so, collaborate with the civil society organizations that have been at it, making sure that the welfare of children is well taken care of.
All right. Another one of unique ministries that have come into play is that of water and settlements. It's a bit of an interesting one to look at, portfolio-wise as well. What would your take be? Would it mean now people would have better view, value, and care of their settlements, especially as far as the amenities are concerned?
We hope it would mean that, because in the past, one of the things that Botswana have recried was that they get allocated plots in unserviced land that has no amenities. So we're hoping with this change, there'd be a bit of a shift in ensuring that, number one, people get access to land, and then two, that the land gets equipped with the necessary amenities for people to settle there and actually make a living. We do hope for the best in that regard, but we'll see how it goes. It's a new ministry. And
there was a trim that happened in the ministries, right? The Ministry of Youth and Gender was separated from the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, Gender, right? What does that mean? Will it provide any safety nets, especially for gender-based violence issues and youth unemployment?
We hope so, because, well, particularly from our perspective as civil society, the gender issues in this country are dire. The gender-based violence situation in this country is of epidemic levels. It's something that really needs to be reacted to or responded to with the level of urgency, because we are not, it's bad for a country like ours. I always say we are said to be a peaceful country. And for me, I always wonder what kind of peace is this?
No guns are shooting anyone.
No guns are shooting anyone. But
there's no war.
Our families are literally at war with each other. Because I think we tend to define peace as merely the absence of war. The
political aspect of peace.
Exactly. But you look at the coexistence between men and women and families and communities. We're literally at war with each other. So we hope to see a deliberate effort to heighten the response, particularly on the gender issues. And then, of course, the youth, the greatest plight is the unemployment. So we hope...
Which is also contributing to GBV.
Absolutely, because people are frustrated. Yeah. The levels of depression are horrible. So we hope to see a deliberate effort to try and address the youth unemployment, which, like you're saying, is also contributing to the gender-based violence. And then with the sports and arts, that's one area that could actually help with the youth unemployment, where young people are able to use their talents and skills and you know, meaningfully self-sustain. So we hope that this split is speaking to some of these core issues that are mainly affecting the young people and, of course, the women and children.
All right. So let me take your summary now and expectations of the civil service, civil society, as far as the upcoming Sona is concerned.
Our expectations, firstly, we expect to hear the president speaking to the current state of the economy. That's the most topical issue right now. And of course, it has implications for all the other issues. An average Muzwana doesn't know whether we are broke or not, we have money or not. So we've
been told.
We've been told, we're reading reports, and you know, so we want to get a clear update. What is the current state of our economy? Particularly given that the current government has made promises to the people. And the timelines for some of those promises made were, say, in November. So people want to hear what's possible, what's not, what is the current state of affairs. And earlier on, when I talked about being open, being transparent, we expect that the Sona provides that opportunity. And we expect that the president will make use of the Sona to lay everything bare on the table. Secondly, the corruption issue. And we do expect to hear the president address that issue, more specifically speaking to concrete measures that the government would take to address the issue of corruption. There's also the issue of you know, the separation of powers. We want to, particularly this year, as an example, we saw the Law Society of Botswana. I'm speaking about it because the president is a lawyer. We saw the Law Society of Botswana boycotting the opening of the legal year, owing to issues that they cited around the judiciary.
And nothing was really taken seriously from there.
Apart from beyond the boycotting of the legal year, we actually want to know. So given the issues that the Law Society of Botswana raised, as an example, what difference should we expect? What is going to be done to restore the public confidence in some of these institutions, in these three arms of government, as far as separation of powers is concerned? There have been cases or incidents of reports of the executive overstepping, judges being given instructions to rule in a certain way. Independence of oversight institutions. You know, we saw the cases of the DIS overstepping onto the DCEC and things like that. Civil society, we've seen the shrinking in our space. I gave the example of, you know, the recent issue that we handled where we ended up attracting visits from the DIS and things like that, just for doing our mandate. Are we assured of, you know, a free, safe space to do our mandate, which includes holding the government accountable and not being seen as villains when you call out government for not doing the right thing or that which they promised. So these are some of the things we expect to hear from the president. All
right, thank you very much, Maetswe, and thank you mostly for making time to talk to us about this. That was Meka Sumulatlwa from BOCONGO, who is the executive director, on just touching on issues. I like the fact that we managed to expand it beyond the Sona. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, and that marks the end of our conversation. Thank you for watching.